here in the state with the attempt to ban cars as we know them, which is just, you would think it's political suicide, but apparently the Democrats think it's worth it because of all the money they get handed by the folks in Washington. Let's talk a little politics with State Senator Rob Sampson from Wolcott. Hello there, Rob.
Hello there, Todd. Thank you for having me.
Nice to hear your voice. You always sound like you're in stable and ready condition.
I'm just trying to psych out the opposition, Todd.
Well, I guess it's working. So what's your take on the moment? Where do you want to start? You want to do some local stuff and talk to us about what's going on with cars? Are you in favor of getting rid of cars with engines?
Absolutely not. I'm a big fan of cars with engines.
Are you in favor of driving up the cost of buying a car dramatically so only the rich will be able to afford it?
Absolutely not.
I can't figure out why.
Because I listen to my constituents. Yeah, no, this whole issue is very strange. It's remarkable, in fact, because I think, just a couple of months ago, we had the situation where this was going to be a small, simple committee legislative vote to go forward with the governor's plan to eradicate gas-powered vehicles by 2035, and they got cold feet. The Democrats on that committee clearly sent a message back to the governor and their leadership that they were not going to, die on the sword for this thing, and so they pulled the vote. But here it is. We're getting close to the start of the session, which is supposed to be on February 7th, and they're talking about going in before the session even begins.
The week before.
Vote. Yeah, a week before to move forward with this. And obviously the reason for that is by going in an emergency special session, you also get to circumvent the people. You get to avoid a public hearing. You get to avoid a lot of committee debate, the chance for many amendments, and more than anything, the chance for citizens and all sorts of affected people, gas station owners and people that know something about the energy grid or anybody who knows anything on the subject to actually weigh in and talk about it. And that's what they want to avoid. I'm not convinced it's going to happen, though, Todd. I mean, I know that the leadership wants it. I mean, I think Matt Ritter, the Speaker of the House, has been pretty adamant that he wants to go forward. I know the governor wants it. But the few conversations I've had with some rank-and-file Democrat lawmakers is that I don't think they really want to vote for it. So my guess is that they're putting pressure back on those leaders to say, don't drag us in. And that's why we haven't heard anything yet. So who knows? The next few days will probably give us an answer.
Well, Matt Ritter said a couple days ago that I'm thinking it was Monday that it would probably be resolved on that day. And the fact that it wasn't suggests that what you're saying is true, which is that even I think Matt Ritter doesn't want to do this. I think he smells the rat that it is. There's no upside for politicians who have to face voters and are worried about what voters feel. And that's what legislators bring back when they go talk to their constituents. Like what a lame brain idea to. And Ritter even said in his interview from when was it? Oh, he was on with Brian on Monday morning on WTIC, and he was saying we have no idea what's going to be going on in 2035. And he wasn't saying it as a way to get out of this, but it sure sounds like a reason why you wouldn't think anybody who has to face voters would want to do it. It demonstrates that there's no policy reason for the state of Connecticut that you would want to ban gas engines on a date certain in the future. And because of that, they're saying they want to rewrite the legislation to have a 3-year check back. And he also was pretending that it also included hybrids, which the legislation didn't before, as far as I can tell.
Right. A lot to unpack there. But just to your first point, remember that Matt Ritter himself represents the city of Hartford. I don't think he has anything to fear about his own election, which is why, when it comes to his wish list, it's whatever he wants.
Well, except his job is to make sure that his politicians are happy, right? His caucus.
Yeah, and I was just getting to that.
Okay.
But the same thing in the Senate as well. Martin Looney represents the city of New Haven, so he's got very little to worry about, except for maybe a Democrat challenger. But these guys are in safe Democrat districts, and of course they want to move mountains. But they do have to be wary of what happens in some of the more purple districts. And there are some right near me. For example, we have a House representative that was elected as a Democrat in Southington by one vote last year, who's definitely at risk. Liz Linehan in Cheshire, she wins by small margins in what can be considered kind of a 50-50 town. So those people are probably sweating it. And then you have a new dynamic, which is, what if the leadership says to Liz and the Southington representative, how about you guys, you can vote against it? Well, then how does that make everybody else in their caucus feel?
Yes, and it also doesn't. It also doesn't consider people like Robin Porter in New Haven, who, the urban representatives, who are the idea that they would go to their voters and say, we're going to raise the cost of buying a car for you by $10,000 or $20,000. How do they get away with that?
Right. Well, I mean, Democrats, as far as I can tell, they take a lot of risks as it is. They do a lot of unpopular things, as far as I can tell, and they just take their own voters for granted, that they'll continue to vote Democrat no matter what kind of crap they shovel on people. And that's borne out so far. But we know that there's been exceptions where people have really pushed back on tolls and the carbon, tax and all that stuff. So I think this is another example where I think they're playing with fire. And part of me hopes they do. Because I don't think any of this is going to come to fruition, no matter what happens in a special session vote. That's another thing, too, Todd, is that they're trying to water down this bill. They want to make it as easy to vote for as possible, partly because they want to put pressure on Republicans for not voting it, and partly because they want to facilitate Democrats having a large plurality in the vote. And finally, they want to be able to take the political victory, even if they don't take the policy victory.
Do you believe that my assumption is that because there were tens of billions of dollars built into the legislation that Biden passed a couple of years ago, the infrastructure bill, I guess it was the what do you call it? The Reduction Act. Yeah. So the Inflation Reduction Act. The purpose of that is to dump money from the federal government into the hands of the states, so that the federal government can make whatever policy it wants. Isn't that how it works? And isn't that what's playing out with this?
And part of it, certainly. Yeah, I mean, all things that the Democrats do are about expanding dependency on government and their own power and control. And make no mistake, that's what this thing is about. It's about telling people how to live. It's telling people what kind of car they can drive. It is denying you the freedom of making that choice for yourself based on some shoddy data and, crap science that doesn't take every aspect of the situation into consideration. We don't really know the impact of electric vehicles on, global climate, et cetera, versus gas-powered vehicles when you take into consideration the manufacture and replacement of batteries and all that stuff, and construction of new facilities and that kind of thing. So, I mean, they got very little to go on from a policy standpoint. This is just an exercise in power and control, and because they're trying to appease the far left green movement, and they want to paint this picture that somehow that they are the party of progress and the future, and that their eyes are open wide, and it's the Neanderthal Republicans that are trying to hold us back. When people who dig in realize that's not true. It's the Republican Party is the party of freedom and opportunity, and we want to see all technology advance, but we want to see it happen in a free market.
Well, plus, if you've got your eyes wide open, they're bound to get burned out by the sun. We're talking to Rob Sampson, state senator from Wolcott. We'll take a quick break and continue on WTIC.
Never miss a moment.
Sampson is here, state senator from Wolcott, an all-around smart and ideologically sound, integrity-oriented guy. Thanks for being here, Rob. What else do you want to tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, we just also had the redo of the Democrat primary election down in Bridgeport. The Ganim-Gomes saga continues.
It was kind of sad, the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't surprising to me. I mean, this is the thing. People keep asking me, is it going to be different? I'm like, no. I mean, why would it be different? You have the same exact people involved and the same exact policy. I mean, nothing has really changed. Maybe there's a little more scrutiny, but hardly. I mean, there's no real way to to track the problem, which is the way they're harvesting absentee ballots.
Yes. We're talking about the election cheating that is routine in Bridgeport. And the court ordered a redo of the mayor's election in Bridgeport, which the primary, which happened yesterday. And the challenger, Gomes, it was kind of sad that he lost by, 1,000 votes or so. But as you're saying, Rob, it's the same old song and dance. And Joe Ganim has learned how you control election outcomes in the city, and he seems to have it down.
Right. Well, I mean, I think they're both participating in the the absentee ballot dance. The question that really people should be asking is, now that we know this stuff goes on, what is the Connecticut legislature going to do about it? And my fear is they're not going to do anything. You know, there's a lot of lip service. You have the Secretary of State running around suggesting, in fact, that people vote in person, which just blows me away. What an admission.
Yes.
You know, that the Secretary of State might suggest that. She knows that the mail-in voting is got problems. You know, I've challenged the Democrats over and over again. We had a special session even after the video came out and the Democrats voted against any changes. And they're making a big talk of it now. But when push comes to shove, I doubt that they're going to actually make any real policy changes. But I'm going to try. Gail Mastro-Francesco, my colleague on that elections committee, and we will be pressuring the Democrats to take up, you know, photo ID and, you know, fixing the absentee ballot problem with, you know, voter verification procedures and so forth.
It was quite remarkable to hear the governor, who issued varying statements in the weeks after this suit was filed and after the ruling that said there was going to be a fresh election. His answers changed on a regular basis, and you got the feeling that his way of dealing with a political crisis, which it should be when Democrats are busted for repeatedly cheating on elections, and then you get video showing how they do it after years of listening to them respond to all accusations of cheating in elections, saying it never happens. But in Bridgeport, the governor said it happens routinely, mostly in Bridgeport, he said. And yet, He doesn't want to do anything about it. He doesn't raise his voice. And he gets away with this in a state that is so devoid of media. It's hard to believe that even a story like this can't get them excited.
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. That is the problem. I mean, you know, when people aren't watching the government's going to do bad things. And Connecticut is the shining example of that. And the mechanism for people to be watching the government is the news media reporting on what's happening. And the Democrats, they have no problem, you know, coming up with a new story on a new day that is completely 180 degrees from what they said the day before, if it suits them, and no one seems to call them on it. I remember during the special session when I was offering my amendments to get rid of drop boxes or, you know, limit the unsolicited mailing of ballot applications, et cetera. The chairman of the elections committee, she came back at me and she says, "These are all great things, Senator. These are great things, Senator Sampson. But, you know, we should really have hearings and have good conversation about this." And I had to remind her, and of course, with the media watching, I put these bills in every year. And they deny me those same exact hearings that they're saying we should have. It's like, are you listening to yourself? But no one calls them on it.
Because there's nobody who's got the continuity of awareness to be able to follow those threads and understand the contradictions, right? And you know, it makes me realize that in the old days, like in Philadelphia and New York, they had these, I forget their names, but there were columnists for the tabloid newspapers who became famous people because they were so aggressive in their pursuit of corrupt government. And in retrospect, I think that's the real honest media. It's not the unbiased media that's honest. It's the biased media that can't stand how corrupt politicians are and call them out on it.
I couldn't agree more, Todd. I mean, the problem is that the news media comes to the state capitol when we're debating an issue. They walk in the room, they listen for the first 30 seconds of a 4-hour debate, and then they write a story that is already preconceived probably, and they take a quote from one side and they take a quote from the other, and they report them as these are the perspectives. But that is so much nothing, because what's really important is the substance of the debate, which is what's true. You know, if I'm saying 2 + 2 = 4 and the Democrats are saying 2 + 2 = 5, you can't just simply say that and call that a news story, you've got to do some investigation. You've got to do some fact finding, and you've got to point out the truth, which is that 2 + 2 actually does equal 4.
Most of the time it does, except when you're doing government accounting, in which, losing money and printing money when you have no right to do either happen continuously.
Amen to that.
So,
government is the root of all evil.
What is?
Government.
Yes. I like that you said that because, people get a little shocked, which is good. When I say that government is evil, people are surprised by that. And it cuts against a grain of, I guess, the way we were raised and patriotic feelings and stuff. But you have to face reality. The problems that we have are caused by big government, and big government is running around trying to make itself bigger to fix the problems that it caused, and it can't fix them. It only makes them worse.
Absolutely. And I wish we had a political party in this country that was dedicated to shrinking government. And sadly, we don't.
Which the Republican Party is supposed to be, but it gets caught up in we get to expand the government, and that gives us more power game.
Right. They simply have devolved into suggesting that they are more honest and would do a better job, which may be true. But that's not good enough. The fact of the matter is that having large government is the source of our problems, because government is not capable of doing things as well as the private sector is. I met with some very nice folks this morning that provide services to homeless people. It's a soup kitchen, for lack of a better term. And I asked a very pointed question to the two very nice and wonderful ladies that do this with private donations. Do they think that the government could hire people to do what you do? And they both said no. Because you just can't. You need very specialized people who actually care and are interested in performing that function to actually do it correctly. And to try and replace that with some social program and, taxpayer dollars being manipulated is just not going to have the same result.
State Senator Rob Sampson, thanks so much for being here. Anything you want to point people towards in terms of your Facebook page or what?
Yeah, you can certainly reach out to me. I'm available online at Sampson4CT.com and on Facebook and so on. And I appreciate the opportunity, Todd. Keep up the good work.
Rob Sampson, take care. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.